It's great to see you all here, despite the snow and the rain and whatever you call the slops in English. I have no idea what that term is. We are here today because Mina Monier is going to present his work, or it's the work that he did in a project that he has just is about to finish, which he was working on in Switzerland, on Marx Ending. And the title of the talk is Marx Ending, Manuscript Evidence and the State of Research. You know the drill, all of you, 13 minutes for Mina, 13 minutes for us. There's a mic over here. We'll try to send it around, or you can also just walk over to it and talk there. And if you're following us online, then use the chat function to pose a question, and Esther will read it for us. Okay, Mina.
Thank you.
Do I need to press any buttons or first?
Yeah. Thanks, Liv. I'll be actually talking about the book that I'm supposed to be
finalizing, working on, which concludes the findings of my research in the last 4 years. Just to clarify, just copyright issue, with the handouts that you've got are full of manuscript pictures that are strictly copyrighted, so please do not circulate them beyond the premises of this building. Right, a few weeks ago, I got the peer review report on an article I submitted. The article is about the Diatessaron, the project I'm currently working on here at MF. But I dealt with the text of Marx's last chapter, Mark 16, as a case study. In my introduction, I justified my choice of Mark 16 by stating that Marx's ending I put in this article. The reviewer stopped at my comment on Marx's ending and said that, and I quote, "It struck me as the wrong description. What exactly is mysterious? There is a broad consensus on this basic question," end quote. I was gobsmacked by this comment, I must say. However, as I received this report shortly before Easter holiday, I had a good chance to reflect on these words. In fact, what the reviewer said is interesting for all sorts of wrong reasons. Our friend reflects the situation.
Sorry, the people online can't hear well. Could you move it a little higher up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's as high as it gets, I guess. Right? Okay, I can just hold it. Okay, there we go. Yes, our friend reflects the situation as found on both sides of the debate. Many scholars today consider that it would be absurd to think of the long ending being an authentic part of the gospel, and see those who do so as committed evangelicals whose case should not be taken seriously. Those who consider the long ending as authentic appeal to the fact that the long ending is well attested in manuscript tradition. Both appeal to the same sort of argumentation, manuscript evidence. The first group appealed to the quality of the two major codices in support of the short ending over quantity, while the second group clearly follows the simplistic approach of box ticking. Once a manuscript has a certain ending, you tick the box, and then count how many manuscripts are in favor of this ending or that ending, exactly as you do when you weigh a bag of courgettes to buy it in the grocery shop. While they dismiss each other, they share the same tendency to simply look no further beyond the text, extract it out of its manuscript ecosystem, and dismiss whatever notes, caveats, or comments the copyists left to express what the copyist had seen in his or her exemplars. Why? Because a paratext is not sacred enough to be considered. We love our comfy standard biblical editions and apparatuses. Many exegetes don't want to get their hands dirty in the chaos of manuscripts behind the cute editions in their hand, because they need to finish off their commentary. In this respect, a statement about a mythical broad consensus is shoved down our throats in order to jog on. But what do we actually find in these manuscripts? Now, could you please have a look at the first slide or the first page? Sorry about our friends in Zoom. This is GA019 or manuscript L, a 9th century manuscript of the Gospels. As you can see in the first column, this is the end of the short ending, verse 16:8 in the Gospel of Mark. It ends with the famous proposition gar, ephobonto gar. Our copyist adds a heading, says ferete po ke tota. The copyist's first note, he says, other words are found, or these words are found. And then he adds the shorter ending, the conclusio brevior. It's a small passage that summarizes what happened after the tomb was found empty. And then the copyist, it seems that he had another exemplar with the long ending. So he adds another heading saying, and these words were also found. And then he starts copying the long ending, the last 12 verses of chapter 16. Now, the question is, what should this manuscript count for? Should be considered as evidence on the long ending, or the shorter ending, or the short ending, or neither? So, I spent 4 years in Switzerland and working on this topic. So, and eventually I'm currently working on my book for Brill. My forthcoming book presents the findings of 4 years of research on the last chapter of the Gospel of Mark, Mark 16. During this research period, I systematically studied Mark's ending in slightly over 1,200 manuscripts in several languages. This study included the different types of texts, such as lectionaries, continuous texts, as well as 553 Greek catena manuscripts. However, a key element of this study is based on material I identified during my field work that I conducted in Egypt, my country, and Lebanon, before my research in Switzerland. That was between October 2017 and February 2018. Beside locating presumed lost manuscripts, such as the Arabic Diatessaron manuscripts and the Gospel of Peter, the Achmim fragment, 4 new manuscripts were found and given new GA numbers, including GA 2937, which will play a substantial role in this study. The objective of this process was re-examining manuscript evidence and learning from new and unexplored material, while the aim behind it was to answer the question of how Mark's ending was perceived by those scribes who offered us the surviving evidence we rely on. As a result, many long-held partial or even inaccurate descriptions of Mark's ending in these manuscripts were reconsidered in this study. Further, fresh data on hitherto unreported paratexts were provided. My book is divided into 4 major parts. The first part will deal with the text of Mark 16 within its codicological context. I will study the interaction between the text of Mark 16 and its related paratexts that appear before, around, and after the text. We will see that the impact of the problem of Mark's ending goes beyond the threshold that separates the text from its associated paratexts, and appears to influence established traditions such as the Eusebian canon tables, gospel prologues, and gospel epilogues on the resurrection that some codices conclude with. Now, I'll just give you a snippet of some of the manuscripts that I dealt with in the next slide. On the left hand, you will see a bilingual manuscript in Coptic and Arabic, Huntington 17 at the Bodleian Library in Oxford. You can see the shorter ending, the conclusio brevior, added later in the margins, in the left margin in Coptic, while the same Egyptian copyist puts a note in Arabic referring to the long ending as the chapter that comes from Greek copies. From this, you can see that the shorter ending is considered as a paratext, a marginal note, while the long ending is part of the body of the text, the running text. Then another manuscript in Chester Beatty Library, a Syriac manuscript of the Gospels in the Harclean tradition. We find a note, a marginal note, similar to the one we found in Coptic, which has the shorter ending framed in red, while another note next to the long ending saying, "Here ends the Gospel of Mark in Armenian copies." An edition of the Syriac manuscript, of this manuscript, I found or identified, which is a manuscript in Mosul in Iraq. Unfortunately, its whereabouts is lost now due to the fact that ISIS used Mosul as its capital for a few years, where many manuscripts disappeared. But luckily, it was digitized earlier before the sack of Mosul, and a copy can be found online. The copyist used even the same marginal comments, including the one about "Here ends the Gospel of Mark in Armenian copies." If you look closer, you will see that a later scribe was not entirely satisfied with this, and he put a plaster to hide it. Now, as we saw the shorter ending as a paratext, now we look at the Ethiopic manuscript preserved at the British Library on the right-hand side with the yellow square that should highlight the shorter ending in this Gaze manuscript. We will see that it is part of the running text. Not just part of the running text, it has a Eusebian canon number. It has a parallel in Luke. It is considered as part of the Gospel of Mark, just as any other part of it. While in the Armenian, since we mentioned Armenian, we look up, we will find that there is a clear line dividing Mark 16, and at the long ending, our friend the copyist says that it comes from Ariston the Elder, a 2nd century figure that was who's associated with John the Apostle and the Evangelist. Now, a copyist had to deal with this incredible diversity of endings. Is this sacred? Is this canonical? Is it part of the running text or not? The second part of my book covers the manuscripts of major catena works. A catena is a commentary. You have the entire four gospel text surrounded by a commentary, which is made of scholia or passages from the fathers of the church. These rich catena texts will inform us about the problems Mark 16 posed to the scribes, how they had to deal with these problems exegetically, and how they textually justified the choices they made in the transmission of an ending. The catena manuscript will inform us about the development of their respective texts as part of the copyist's strategies to cope with the varying endings in their exemplars. And therefore, we will be able to see through their lens a situation of ancient copies that we no longer have access to. Now, I'll just refer to one case that is GA 2937, and it's that I found in Alexandria. It is the very only commentary that actually defines what the shorter ending is, according to that copyist. It tells us that the shorter ending is, in fact, a prologue or a hypothesis or argumentum to the long ending. And so if we look at its twin in Prague, the one in here in the slides, you will see that in the yellow, this yellow line or this yellow square, you have the shorter ending being part of the commentary. It tells us that this is a prologue to what's in the running text, the long ending. In that case, this catena provides us with a solution, perhaps his own way of solving one of the most mysterious cases that we have in manuscript evidence, and that is that the shorter ending, the conclusio previo, never appears on its own without the long ending, never, except in one manuscript, a Latin manuscript, Codex Bobiensis. Otherwise, it always appears before the long ending in all manuscripts, according to all traditions and languages. Why is that? Perhaps because it's not an ending, but a prologue to the long ending, according to our friend here. Now, where have we been? Yes, this is the last part. As the first two parts informed the reader on the perception and transmission of Mark's ending in the manuscripts of different forms of writings, the third part will be dedicated to the question of how to express this transmission in the age of digital culture. I'll address questions regarding the transcription guidelines, editing, visualization, and accommodation of paratexts, which inform text-critical choices of future apparatuses, based on my experience of this process during my research. If we go back to this slide, the Catena slide, we will see that I have done an HTML edition of the Catena here. This is a transcription in Greek that resembles the Catena, and then it appears here in English. In fact, this transcription has behind it a code of XML and JavaScript that informs the computer about what this text is. If this is a commentary, if what paratexts can be included, and then this XML can be used in automatic apparatuses that use software or genealogical method to trace the connection, the interconnection between texts and paratexts to produce our future apparatuses. Hence digital humanities. So in the manuscript, the third part, yes, choices of future apparatuses. Finally, the fifth part will offer texts and translations of the materials that I studied in the previous parts. This part will be a source of these new texts for future studies. I provided argumenta hypotheses that prologues that appear in the manuscripts are often ignored by New Testament scholars, and epilogues, canon tables that are found in the paratexts, which tell us about how the endings were perceived by the copyists, giving them the voice that we often ignore. And finally, as one of the means of communication in manuscripts, it's not just digits, numbers like canon tables or texts, but also paintings, miniatures that we find in manuscripts. They tell us about the struggle that a copyist can find himself in when he's trying to reconcile the account of the resurrection in the long ending in Mark with the parallel texts in the other Gospels, and how they try to harmonize them. But is this of any relevance for us? Now, I'd like to play a game with you guys. If you have the final slide, the final page here, it's an icon, apparently, a Byzantine icon. Now, this is supposed to be an account of the woman's visit to the empty tomb. If you look up, you will find the Greek of Mark 16:6. Igerti ou kestino they. He was risen, he is not here. We will look at here. When I saw this, I thought that this should be Mark 16. Now, if you hide half of it and look at this, now we have three women here. That's true. Mark 16 has three women because Matthew has two, right? And you have Mark 16:6 mentioned. Okay. Now let's hide the woman, the part of the woman, and look at the other half. We have an angel on the door, and the linen cloth of Jesus, the shroud. Now, this is absolutely unmarkan. Mark doesn't have an angel. He has a young man, Neaniskon, and he was inside the tomb. The one who has a mark, who is an angel, with these beautiful wings and fancy socks, is in fact Matthew. Yeah, is in fact Matthew, not Mark. And he also, but the linen cloth is not even mentioned by Mark or Matthew. It's in Luke and John. So, what have we got here? We've got a harmony, a diatessaron of the Gospels, the four Gospels, in this icon. Now, here's the trick. This icon is not ancient. It doesn't come from a manuscript. It's on the wall of the National Capodistrian University of Athens. It's on a wall. It's huge. It's 5 meters width and 3 meters height. It separates 2 lecture halls in the campus. I asked the iconographer, Professor Georgios Kardis, and he told me that this is a manuscript. This is actually Mark 16. He thought that this is Mark 16, but apparently it's not. It's a harmony with elements that are rather unmarked. So what does that mean? It means that the same methods, the same struggles that the painters and exegetes had when they were working the manuscripts exist today, and they survive in the practices of interpreters and even painters, iconographers. And I will be dealing with iconography as well, Mark 16 in iconography as well in my book. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have some time for questions and answers.